Whoa. Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Dave Dobbs here. It's the, what are we today? I think it's the 19th of December 2018. And well, we've had a few sightings. I've just, a lovely lady, Gloria Zag, has got in contact with me and sent me a couple of sightings. So I'm going to start with the with these shots. I'll write down where I can't remember where she said. I can't remember if it was Chicago or Downers Grove or something like that. Illinois. I'm never too sure where Chicago is. My American geography is pretty crap, I've got to be honest with you. But there's that shot, and she sent me a few shots. Some on the 5th. The first one's on the 5th, and then she sent me more coming through on the 10th. And I saw the big fireball over Florida. Sorry. That was about well, the video was posted. The video I saw of it was posted on the 7th of December, which kind of correlates with also with Gloria's shot, and people saying it's a chemtrail, and yeah, it's exactly what I'm expecting to see. And we were expecting Comet Wirtanen to come through, weren't we? That was supposed to come through 3 days ago on the 16th of December, and I went out to try and see it, and I couldn't see it. And that was supposed to be equivalent to as big as Halley-Bopp. You know, that was supposed to be witnessed by everyone. And of course, correct me if I'm wrong, if you can show me some legitimate footage of that entering our night sky, but I haven't seen anything on the internet. All those people that were following it, I haven't seen them post anything showing me any definitive evidence that we saw something like even Comet Halley-Bopp on the 16th. Am I surprised? Are you surprised? That's going to enter our night sky after it passes Earth, and after, hopefully, Earth passes it. And you know, I really tried to, obviously I don't absolutely know, but as I said in my previous few videos about the kind of like this 20th of January kind of correlation because of the flood, right, literally where I'm sitting right now, I'm sitting on the Somerset Levels. All of this, I'm of a mind, will go underwater. I mean, much of it's flooding now because we've had extremely heavy rain. It's just it's right at maximum load at the moment around here, but that's very normal. It's a very managed floodplain, you know, so it's got lots of facilities to deal with that, and it does deal with that. I think it's around about Weston-super-Mare. You have the which is due west from where we are right now, so it's out that way. And this, is that right? No, what am I talking about? Sorry, it's due that way. The sun's going down over there. It's due out that way, so it's the water gets pumped out around here, out to sea. Well, it's out to sea. I say it's out to sea. It's that point where basically the ocean comes in between Wales and kind of Somerset, going off down to Cornwall, that sort of area. It comes in and it turns into the Severn Estuary, and then it splits off into the River Severn and the Bristol Channel. And as I said before, in 1606, on the 20th of January 1606, it flooded here. Now, like I've said also, it tries to demonstrate the change in calendar, because going from the Julian calendar, that would, if we were to use that same pattern, that same model, that same date would now be the 30th of January. And Brexit for me, you know, when I first really started writing, and I had a whole calling into this whole thing because of visions that I was having, and dreams, and and much of it had been triggered, I think, by ayahuasca. You know, and it helps. I see the shamans when I do ceremonies these days in South America or something. I see the shamans drink. I see them they just let the ayahuasca just touch their lips. Sometimes they don't really need to ingest it, because it's something that's so natural for the human mind, because it's what our brain does anyway. It releases DMT that once we start opening that door, it becomes more easy for us to use that door ourselves. And ultimately, where this video, I suppose, where this video is going to go, it's all about doorways, because that's what's actually happening right now. You know, we don't know when this big flyby occurs, and by my model, it's going to be the biggest of all. But I've thought that before, and then I've had to upgrade my model and changed it, and maybe you know, I've so run out of runway with this now on so many levels. You know, I'd really run out of runway with it. I was so over it I've been over it for ages. But I was around about September, and then it was those subscribers who actually who funded my funded me a little bit there, and I ended up you know, nearly sort of like nearly bringing in sort of like £1,000. It was like 850 or something like that overall, but it really just put that little bit of wind in my sails, and thank you for that, to sort of push me further and say, come on, you need to upgrade this model. And that is my message to all of you out there right now. You all need to upgrade your model and let go of old models right now, and just have a more open-ended kind of model that is available to, is able to expand. It's not bound by rigid belief. We all need to upgrade the model. We all need to start seeing the bigger picture. Now, when portals, I'm of mind that the biggest flyby, which I'm assuming is going to come in because of the previous, you remember the big one, where sort of like where we saw, you know, Trump's inauguration. And then we saw even bigger ones, you know, Turkey Report and Seven Spalding got epic shots of it at the beginning of this year. Again, a year later. All around that kind of like late sort of January sort of time. You know, the January the 20th, January the 30th, is it going to be around about that sort of time? You know, they've made this Brexit vote for the next Brexit vote for around about the 15th of January, and I thought it was going to be recently, and I was so nervous. It put me through so much stress, because if they crash the currency now, and that's, you have to understand what they're trying to, what the big intention here is, what this is really all about. What are we not being told? You know, there's something big going on. You can't just walk everyone away from a massive financial system that is generating and moving trillions and trillions of dollars, euros, pounds, just a money pot. You can't just walk away from that. You have to be offering a bigger money pot to make someone walk away from an absolutely massive money pot. Surely there's got to be something that they've lined up. So you have to start thinking, well, why is this thing going to align there? You know, what happens when they have this vote and they haven't left? You know, the good thing about not doing the vote now is that you've put off a kind of like a really kind of detrimental kind of process to all our currencies by not putting it off, because it's going to affect the US dollar, it's going to affect the pound, it's going to affect the euro massively, and it's going to cause massive uncertainty and cause massive migration of monies into all sorts of different type of assets. And it could be, you know, if they've got something new lined up, like a new currency. You see, we see all these digital currencies coming up all over. We could consider the Venezuelan currency a complete failure, but of course they've already launched their new kind of digital currency, and so they're relying on that. You can't buy anything in China now without using your phone and that sort of stuff. India is doing the same thing. All these countries are moving to a very digital currency that is totally accountable. And you know, you couldn't put a calculator near kind of like the pound, the euro, and the sort of like the dollar, really, because they're speculative currencies, and that derive their money from the movement of money. So the more money you can move, the more money you can print, and that's the game. And it's a dangerous thing. It's like having a sports car, taking it out of gear and just throwing a rock on the accelerator pedal and waiting for it to finally go bang. It's it's something that the rest of the world has been enslaved to, and there's been so much money involved. You can't stand in the way of it. But what's happened is all the different countries' technological frontier has risen to such a point where they become real players. You know, you have to honour and respect them. You can't enslave them because they're too advanced. We're all becoming too advanced, and everything is reaching ahead, isn't it? Technologically, we're reaching ahead. Environmentally, we're reaching ahead. You know, fiscally, we can see that we're totally reaching ahead in terms of our currencies just going completely into, you know, it's all just dollars and absolutely no sense now. You kind of see all these different type of walls approaching us, and yet we have this other wall that none of our models kind of explain, all these earthquakes and volcanoes, and all we try and do is try and deny that in every way, shape and form, but it's just getting too big and too fantastic. And of course, if my model is correct, as we get closer into the end of December and into January, you know, my idea, I would guess by the sightings that we would expect to see it around about at the end of January. It could be the 20th of January. But that seems to be the sort of point. But you can imagine as we get closer and closer to that point, it's big, it's going to affect us in many ways. I feel like we're past the most dangerous point of asteroids, certainly until it passes us completely. Then who knows what we're going to expose to after that. But that seems like it's much more the likeliest time that we're going to really get the asteroids is kind of when it's past us and we're kind of exposed to the tail. We should be moving almost perpendicular away from it as it approaches us. So for every bit it gets closer to us, we are literally moving away from it. So we might get through this unscathed. But when this comes around, from all the messages that I've been getting, and my understanding overall is that this is the big doorway that has been opened, and it's been opened since it arrived in 1939, which is ironically when the carbon spike, well, not so much the carbon spike, because the carbon obviously carried on going after 1939, but that was the heat. It reached this absolute hot point, and then the heat started dropping down, and obviously the carbon just carried on going up, and then because of the release of all those earthquakes and the activity was still ongoing, even though the sort of like it was getting less. There's obviously massive amounts of carbon dioxide now thus stored in the oceans as a result of all this seismic activity, and of course the increased heat of having this extra sun in the northern hemisphere of our solar system, this planet X, has exacerbated the process of the release of the carbon dioxide that was stored in the oceans. You know, I'm guessing there, but putting together all the information from that we've gathered so far, you know, and it's guesstimates and estimates of what's causing that heat. You know, that obviously the kind of like the theories are that our magnetospores has actually been seriously weakened by a kind of like a low energy sun, or a sun going into grand solar minimum and not being able to deflect the solar rays. And that's why the planet is experiencing greater heat, or that's why it's barely gone up a full degree in 100 years, and yet ocean temperatures have risen astronomically, you know, just astronomically, which is why we've had the blob and what have you. But you know, where this point over the Emperor Hawaiian seamount chain, where all the kind of seamounts, all the volcanoes are heating the ocean and creating all the algae, and even all the red algae. You know, that's another thing. All the red algae they talk about, and we're told that's the Red Seas are caused by the red algae. But actually, when you boil that down, you also realise that the algae are having to ingest to create that in their waste. They're having to ingest a much higher rate of iron, which is how they explain. That's how they're explaining, because they're saying it's caused the algae. And of course, where's the iron coming from? They're saying it's coming from the Sahara. So it's a kind of a looped way of saying, oh, it's not the kind of dust, but actually ultimately it does come back to the dust entering it. You know, not that, you know, I would have assumed that the Saharan desert is made mostly of silicon, not iron. Or, you know, they say it's North Africa as well, not just the Sahara. But Maybe it is all coming from there. I think if you followed my channel enough and you've seen the evidence I've offered, we can distinctly see that this is iron coming from the tail of whatever that twin tail object is. So a doorway is going to close at this time. It's not that it's opening, it's that a doorway is closing, a doorway that is opened and closed for time immemorial. And when it closes, it won't be for another 337 years. Well, you know, it will actually be about 250 years. And then you get a kind of like, in that 337 years, the last 80 years is that kind of process where the door opens. So we have this doorway closing, and when it closes, those souls, I'm of mind, that are basically in Earth are the soul group that are going to be incarnating here, whichever souls come through. And so this is about different energies are seeking to make sure that their kind of soul group are the ones that incarnate, because that which incarnates on Earth, because of the fabric of what Earth really is, as I'm understanding, and it's been given to me by kind of a family of channels in my own process, is that we create a heavenly realm through this realm by the things that we love. This is our access. This is like the fitting service into a higher realm. That this is your body, your very being is the space portal. Your experience is the transmission through that space portal that creates the identity and the fabric of the world beyond this space, without coming in here and existing in this physical 3 dimension. You cannot project into a higher dimension. This is the entry point. And so it's a very sought after thing. And so you're going to be given choices, and what they're going to attempt to do in this, I don't know how this is going to work. I don't know, I'm just piecing it together, but I'm assuming that the whole 5G network has been set up to transmit, and I don't think it's going to be just to do with your mobile telephones. I'm of a mind that they're going to crash the currency, and they've got something completely new lined up. And they're going to expect everyone to get chipped, and that these transmitters are going to be transmitting messages to these chips that they're going to implant into us, because it's going to be all part of their new kind of banking system. And these things could likely be also mind reading and mind transmitting kind of telepathy sort of devices as well, that can psychically sort of like transmit signals to your brain, you know, to offer a thought narrative into your mind. And it's very difficult, you know, and that's what I'm of a mind is in operation at the moment. That's what the ego is, the ego transmission. And this thing is, when this thing comes by, it's not that the door closes, it just pulls everything away. Just pulls everything away. Pulls all the attachments away that aren't rooted to the heart. That which is spirit, which is rooted to the heart, is like the leaves of a kind of like, it's like the leaves of a palm tree. You know, the tree will fall down before the kind of like, the tree will get blown over and break its roots out of the ground before the kind of like the leaves get ripped off the tree. But that which isn't attached, when you get these electromagnetic energies, these enormous electromagnetic energies coming through, they're like a massive tempest to all this kind of 4th dimensional psychic hacks that are kind of invading the human state at the moment. And ultimately there will just be one, and that's what this is all about. This is about moving from a duality into a singularity, and this is a regular cycle of what this earth does. This is how new souls come in and new souls go out. It is the process, you know, and it's a different doorway. And I bring Mars into my subject a lot, because that's how I found Nibiru. That's how I found Planet X, what they were fleeing from and why they, I believe, came here. I don't believe, the science just kind of lays it out quite bare, as I've taken you through so many times in my videos, because it's the specific part of the narrative that I bring in, which is very unique to my own message. You know, we all find the fingerprint of Planet X in different things. Some of us, you know, Valentina Zarkova, you know, finds it in, you know, what she calls the sun dynamo effect, and you know, some people find it in the seismic activity, some people find it in the carbon story, some people find it in the kind of like in the climatic kind of like you know, kind of shenanigans that are going on at the moment. Other people are kind of, you know, astronomers. You know, however you're kind of finding this thing, however kind of wherever you're kind of finding the fingerprint of this big planetary influence that's affecting not just Earth but many planets in our solar system. You're kind of, we're all looking at something, aren't we? We're all looking at the same thing from a different, from one side of the fence or the other. We're all looking at something massive unfolding right now. For me here, it's for me, as I'm explained, is that the human state has been dominated largely for quite some time by an ego state of mind, which has been transmitted, and that transmission will be destroyed by this process. It has no license after this process, unless humanity, the humans that exist after, choose to reconnect to that and re-establish that. A mind control system, a government. You know, that will be removed, and that will be dismantled. Obviously, every attempt is going to be made to try and stop the shutdown of that by whatever process. And I imagine it's going to be the implement of a new banking system, and to make us go, for Britain to make us go off the edge of this cliff. And if we go off the edge of this cliff, we're going to take everyone else with us. You know, financially, it's going to have such massive implications. It's just going to be too big. You just can't take that too many legs out from under the table and not expect it to collapse. And so that's going to generate a kind of like, I imagine that financial crash is going to create a very rapid onset hunger, because of the food shortages that will create. That will be speeded up by us departing Brexit, departing Europe without a deal. That will cause massive fear. And that's everything they're playing into. They've obviously got something new designed, a new electronic-y sort of currency, and it's going to be an upgrade, and there's going to be lots of conditions all tapped up in that. It's all going to be about free trade and everything else like that. And you know, if Britain comes out, Britain seems to be the main credit line for sort of like what's happening in Europe. We seem to be the ones who are supposedly bailing out kind of Greece and Spain, and all this money flooding out coming via the city of London. And, you know, we're talking about a massive change. We're talking about walking into a famine, and how prepared we're going to be for that. You can see the vibrational frequency that could be created by attempting to create so much blame and so much anger and so much hunger to drive it all. How you prepare for that? How am I prepared for that? I'm so not prepared for it. You know, I haven't managed to achieve any of the things I've really set out to achieve. I mean, I've put a message out. I've managed to get a message out. Whether people are listening, I don't know, but for our governments, I would tell you that breaking from Europe, for us, for Britain, for breaking from Europe and leaving without a deal, just leaving cold and leaving without a deal, even as far as the damage we've done at the moment, but leaving without a deal for Britain will be catastrophic. It will be catastrophic. Catastrophic beyond your wildest dreams. Because of what you're attempting to do a deal with. what is being done behind the scenes, and the pressure that you will put on, that will be put on the rest of the world as a result of this shift, and how the knock-on effects of it all. We could do this so much more gently. We could do this so much more gently. We could do this so much more nicely. We could have done this so much more nicely. There's a doorway that's closing. And remember where your breath goes. It goes into here. And you can breathe through so much fear, so much anxiety, and keep following that breath, remembering it bypasses this completely, doesn't it? It bypasses all that noise of jealousy and hate and fear and all the ramblings it comes up with. But be sensible, you know, they're going to really try and suppress those who know this knowledge. This is what, if you have knowledge of planet X, you know sacred knowledge, and they know who knows now. And that's not to strike fear into you, it's just to remember net, non-electronic transfer. I talk about it in my book. Remember the power of non-traceability. You know, they're going to do whatever they're going to do, and the biggest part of that, no doubt, is going to kick in about the 15th. And realistically, that gives you about 2 weeks, the most, I reckon. And well, you've got to try and not get that chip, if that's what they're doing, and try and stay in peace. And try and help those people around you stay in peace. How's best to achieve that goal? What's going to alleviate their anger most of all? Their frustration, their blame. What's going to soften that? Food, warmth, affection, friendship, support. It's just going to be an adventure, you know. I know I'm so anxious about this, but I've carried this in a way, and I realise that those who see this, just, you know, people who see me think, why would I want to look at this? Why would I want to see this? Why would I want to connect with that pain that Dave carries? You know, I wrote Laughing Gas to try and break away from this pain, and ultimately, in the research I've done, I've also come back to it. Also, you know, but of course there's nothing I can do about it other than bring awareness into this realm of what's happening, and just make you understand that this has come around many, many, many times, and it will come again. And it's just part of our journey. And if we want to turn it into an adventure, we can. And you can ask God to help you, and I'm sure God will help you. Especially God can help you vibrationally. But you have the ability right now in these last days to try and stockpile a little bit of food and that sort of stuff. Don't have to be too crazy, not going too, you know, but just stockpile a little bit of food and just do those sort of things, so that, you know, we've been doing it, and we've been constantly doing it. And I know each time this has flown by, you know, I've never failed to give you a flyby with all of this. And all around the world, as this has gone on, all around the globe, there's been massive suffering, constant war, because our governments drive war to keep the vibration as low as possible all the time through this. You know, and so there's all these, you know, you think of all the suffering that's happened as a result of that, and all the suffering of all that has happened, all those that have lost in the floods and in the volcanoes and in the kind of like in the tsunamis and in the kind of like crazy storms and the freezing cold. You know, there has been so many that have suffered, that you doing that process of just keeping a little bit of food and prepping a little bit, that is our only front line. That is our only front line outside of our spiritual connection to a higher place, and holding on to that, and helping those people around us hold on to that in any which way we can, especially if we feel we're disrupting their ability to stay in a higher place. Reach out and try and see from their perspective and try and soften the blow for them in any which way you can. And just make it easier for them, even if they think bad about you, for whatever reason. Maybe they don't understand your perspective right now, maybe you don't understand theirs. But maybe you can at least try and see from their perspective, even if their perspective doesn't make sense. They're trying to save the world. All those people going on about carbon story, I was one of them. We see the carbon story falling apart and realise the carbon story really isn't just showing an absolute indicative kind of indicator of kind of volcanoes and earthquakes. Last thing you want to be doing is building power stations on fault lines that are about to shake, and then not to be able to acknowledge that the whole media just clamps down on it. You can't even look at that. It's a terrible travesty what's happening now. But this is the doorway to a very dark place opening up, and it's the closing up, and it's the doorway to a very light place opening up also. When it closes, we go on our journey with that soul group, and they incarnate, and they have these lives and incarnate, and if whoever you are that ends up here, whatever you leave is what you're left with. You will inherit what you choose to leave. The humans that are here will still be here. There'll be the same ongoing race. That will be, the soul group may be different, but if you destroy what you destroy, that will be what you are incarnating in. You will be cutting off your nose to spite your face. So finally, I'd just like to leave you. I know it's a long message, with the message that was given to me at the very start of this, when I wrote Laughing Gas, and I was given that message, and it said, I want you to invite them in. And I want you to know that that soul group can come in now. And this soul group that's been trying to come in for a long time, once they've come in, this whole process has been to facilitate the arrival of a very stuck soul group. And this process is about bringing that soul group in. And they've been stuck in a very low place, out of a body for a very long time. They've been ghosts, they've been put behind ghosts. They're coming in now. And us here, humanity, the beings that are here right now, have to rise above the mistakes that were made on Mars. But our ego through us have lived right through that whole process again that they created for themselves on Mars. We have lived that whole process through exactly what went on Mars, to tally and reach down as if to pick that soul group up. That's why this has been allowed. And so it's been exchanged. Humanity has taken a huge evolutionary step forward and become neck and neck with these once invaders by this process. So we've taken an enormous evolutionary step. But in that process, a new soul group is going to be coming in, as I'm understanding it, and that's going to be a big part of the change. And there's always new soul groups coming to Earth, and always old soul groups leaving, going on, leaving their mark somewhere or other and going on to a higher place in this great cycle. It is a vibrational cycle, and it just gets higher and higher. And there is no good or bad, it's just a process of frequency and vibration. And Earth facilitates that. That which comes in has to live within Earth. And it is kind of Crowley-esque in one sense. It is do as I do as I will is the whole of the law. It is that in one sense, and where it falls short is pay thy karmic dues. That is the rules of this earth on entry. Do as thy will is the whole of the law, but pay thy karmic dues. Pays up of where that falls short. There's karma attached to this realm, and many souls get stuck in here, stuck in the karmic realms. And now's the clearing time. And that's all you're seeing is just the relinquishing of the last karma before we start the new process. And it's looking to be a bit messy. Big golden rings of light around you. Pray to God. However you connect to that space in your heart, that divine space, that space. Pray in that space to that connection. And ask for divine assistance through this. Try and listen. Read the signs. Listen to the signs. Follow your heart. Thousand thank yous for the experience of being here on this beautiful planet. And having the opportunity to speak my truth. Good luck. And all of those of you who are going from the global warming camp and dashing across to GSM, Grand Solar Minimum. To me, you are like on a Titanic at the moment. You were dashing from the bow to the stern. And you're all going to jump straight over the hull. And as all of you migrate and you suddenly see GSM is the new golden goose, where all the funding is now going to be thrown. As you come up with this new system, don't forget the divinity and where the real power is that drives all this. Really, don't forget about that. Because he doesn't want to forget about you. You are choosing to let go of it. You cannot change that. You cannot change your right of choice there. Whatever new theory you're going to come in, you're going to write God out of that. Good luck.